You're listening to Oppositional Forces. Bad guys for good reasons. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Oppositional Forces. I am your host, Scotty Don't, and with me today, as always, is Mr. Frost, the last Jotun of the Frozen North. Mr. Frost, say hello.
What's up?
How you doing today?
I'm all right.
You're all right?
I'm all right.
Feeling good?
I'm feeling it.
I'm feeling it because this is one of my favorite subjects in the whole world.
My least favorite. My least favorite.
Near and dear to my heart and far, far away from Mr. Frost's patience.
Yes.
Is surveillance or intelligence gathering. I'm a big fan of this subject for a number of reasons, mostly because I'm somebody who likes a lot of control in my life. And
to say the least.
So as a control freak, I like to know what I'm up against.
But he doesn't like to share any information to help anybody help him control that environment.
Listen. Okay. There are two things you need to understand about intelligence. Rule number one is you never tell people everything that you know.
Unless they're supposed to help you with that task. They should be in the know.
Right. And number two, see rule number one.
Yeah.
So, surveillance. Well, last episode, we talked about counter surveillance, and Mr. Frost was very adamant about he thought we were going out of order, and we talked about that. The reason
I still feel that way.
you can feel however you like. The reason I wanted to do surveillance second is because I think once people have kind of a general grasp of how to understand what's going on around them and how that ties into situational awareness, they can start to hone as the op 4, right? Thinking like the bad guy, they can reverse engineer how people are looking at them into how they can look at other people. And that pancake can flip both ways.
Right.
Okay.
I agree with you.
I don't know why it was a food reference, but we're going to go with that.
Because I'm fat and I like pancakes.
I'm certainly not hungry.
Oh, no. That dinner was delicious, by the way.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. So, getting into the trade craft, the field craft of surveillance, let me preface this by saying I know we have a lot of professionals that are listening, and Mr. Frost and I appreciate all of your listenership, everything that you guys do for us, guys and gals. This is not meant to act as some sort of, advanced master class
or guide
or guide to in-depth surveillance and intelligence gathering.
Right.
What this is meant to do is to give the general public a taste and maybe remind some of our more professional listeners about what's out there, what's going on,
right?
Maybe what's new. I don't know. I don't feel like we're reinventing the wheel tonight, and I don't feel like that we're trying to teach all of you, how to become private investigators, because that's not what I'm trying to do.
Because I definitely am not that.
Right. And although I held a private investigative license for a couple of years, I am by no means, a master of the craft. And anybody who knows me understands I know a little bit about a lot of different things, and that's about as far as it goes.
I'm a jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. So let's start carving into this turkey, food reference. And let me ask you this.
Hey, I have to set this preface of stop talking about Thanksgiving. We haven't even had the Marine Corps ball yet.
Hey.
All right. It hasn't even been Veterans Day yet, which comes after
the Marine Corps birthday.
So let's take it easy.
Dating this episode, we are a day and a half away from yours and my birthday.
Yes.
The Marine Corps birthday.
Right.
Semper Fidelis to all the Marines listening. November 10th, 1775. We, were established in a bar by a bunch of drunks who were contemplating about the idea of liberty.
Right.
And this bunch of misfits is what came out of it.
Right. That's why the Marine Corps is like the end all beat all of, DUIs and alcohol related incidences.
Well, we also happen to wage decent war. Don't forget about that part.
Well,
Not me.
There's been some pretty good practitioners that have said, hey, Marines you want something done, let the dogs of war handle it. And by all means, let us handle it.
Right. So, Mr. Frost, why is surveillance, or I'm using the terms, interchangeably, intelligence gathering. Why is this important?
Well, I mean, for many different factors. I mean, from your personal life to professional life, there's so many different aspects that you really have to figure in. You have kids, you have employees. You don't have to be necessarily the owner of a business, but you can be a manager or a lead or supervisor, whatever you want to call it. But you have to have kind of that surveillance or intelligence gathering. I know that we're going to talk about kind of a dossier thing, and you and I have different views on that. But it's a necessity in all things that you do.
Right. And some of the things that I think are important to cover today may be parts of surveillance that not everybody's totally familiar with. Obviously, you have the sitting in a car conspicuously, you and a partner with a giant telescoping camera. And that's more of like the professional side. And we're really not getting into that today.
Right. And it's not like a spy thing. It's not like intelligence gathering of like, oh, I need to see the movements of in and outs and things like that. That's not what we're here really talking about.
Right. One of the things that I think might open up some eyes as they're listening to this is background checks.
Right. That's part of surveillance. Absolutely.
Right. And so when you are getting ready to hire someone, whether it's a new employee or you get a new person on your team, and you're dealing with, important work where it's not just, any Tom, Dick, or Harry who needs to come in and swing a hammer.
Requires a clearance where before you were material handler of, maybe something.
Right. Or even just a position of trust.
Right.
You are handling, corporate finances. Right. You are handling, business, HR, personnel files.
Yeah, moving into a different job title that requires more responsibilities.
Right. So background checks is a really important part of surveillance. It allows you to get a cleaner understanding of at least the legal background of a person.
Right, and it helps you identify with a person as well. I mean, even in our personal lives, Yeah, I won't go any further into that. But, the Dr. Evil of me comes in and says, hey, I want to get to know this person, or I want to know more about this person.
Right.
There's so many different methods, and being able to relate and being able to use those skills with somebody that's what con artists do. They're fabulous at it.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I think is kind of the lost art in background checks is interviews. It's all well and good to send away for a $35, $45 background check for public records. It's a whole nother thing to take the references somebody gives you. If you're hiring a babysitter, or, you're looking to identify someone for employment at your business.
Right. This is why it's so important to contact that person and say, hey, can I use you as a reference? Because ultimately there are people out there like us. Yeah, there are a lot of employers that call, hey, do you know this person? Yes. There are some legalities of like employers can only say, hey, would you hire this person back or whatever. But when it comes to, a babysitter, I really feel like those questions of like, hey, would you trust this person with your kids?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that actually segues just a little bit into another kind of disclaimer, and that's the legal one. Although we are bad guys, the rule of thumb is don't commit crime on behalf of, your what I would consider like good intentions. So when we're talking about, contacting people, doing background checks, looking people up, we are not talking about stalking.
Oh, most definitely.
We are not talking about breaking the law and harassing somebody or, people around, that individual circle. We are strictly talking about collecting legal information that is legally accessible, that people leave those breadcrumbs everywhere.
Right.
And if you're hiring a babysitter or a contractor to do some work on your house or whatever, if you're a private individual, there is nothing wrong with calling references and asking tough questions.
Right. Not super private questions. That's
not
what
personal questions.
It comes down to, hey, how safe did you feel with them coming into your home? Was the employees that they had coming in, was it just them, or did they have, how long did the job take? If it took like a week, did you see a new face every day coming in? Because that kind of tells me, especially with a contractor, that either one, they're not staffed properly, or maybe they have a problem with employees that maybe aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. So, excuse me. Another important reason why we do surveillance is to identify threats. This goes a lot deeper into your gut feelings, situational awareness, all the things that we've talked about before. I think this is a natural progression into that. So, excuse me. Identifying threats, whether it be threats in your neighborhood, threats in your work environment, the play group that you take your kids to, whatever the case may be. I think it's important to know who's around you and what they're capable of, what they have, and be able to then take that information and break it down into actionable intelligence, where you say, hey, look, so-and-so down the street, we just had Halloween. We're not trick-or-treating at so-and-so's house, for a particular reason.
Right.
Registered sex offender, multiple felon, whatever. It's important to know, and not just operating on rumors and not just operating on, the hens, clucking in the hen yard, but actual, solid, legitimate information that says, hey, you need to be looking out for this person.
Right. And by no means somebody who is a multiple felon or anything like that. Don't get us wrong, because I know some very good practitioners and things like that, in kind of the other aspect of they're very well educated. They're very good people. Maybe they just got caught up in the wrong place, wrong time. Sometimes just because somebody says, oh, they're a multiple felon, maybe they were an alcoholic. And back in the day when a felony was, a DUI, and you were 19 and you got a DUI, and then, you were 21 and got another DUI. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, just because somebody has a felony doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person.
Right. And so, and context matters. So being able to break down that information and digest the intelligence that you've gathered and then make reasonable determinations is what we're looking at.
Right. And now when you see sex offender lists, you know, something to be very, very cautious of, especially in the predatory world, is, you know, there's a lot of people on a sex offender list that in the middle of the night, they were peeing off the off ramp. And because somebody said they saw somebody's junk hanging out, suddenly now they're a sex offender because they were taking a pee in the middle of the night.
Right. Yeah.
So you need to, you know, ask those hard questions. If you're going to get yourself wrapped around the axle about it,
right.
Don't be afraid to ask, because, you know, there's some things that, you know, you get caught up from a man's point of view. You get caught up with a girl that's 16 years old, and nowadays a 16-year-old can look 25.
Right.
And mom and dad get upset because 16-year-old didn't divulge the fact that she was 16
to her 18, 19-year-old boyfriend.
Right. And then they're caught up in, oh, now he's some kind of pedophile. Now there are a lot of things that have changed in that aspect, but there's some things that have really screwed some people over just because of context.
Sure. And, you know, for the record, you know, although it is important to take responsibility for the actions, you know, that we,
extreme ownership.
Yeah, exactly. Extreme ownership. We've all made mistakes. People have, you know, done all sorts of things that gets them the big red stamp of bad guy on their forehead.
Right.
But understand context matters, and no one person is the sum of one single action.
Right.
So if you've got, you know, while you're diving into this and you're looking into your neighbors and your friends and you find something, remember, you know, Tom down the street is the same dude you've known for 15 years that you've never had a problem with. And now something pops up and you're like, I didn't know that.
Right.
That's okay. Go clear it up with him.
Right. If it's a concern.
Right. If it's a legitimate concern.
Right. I think that, you know, there's a lot of people out there that like to make somebody a villain of something, you know, and it depends on who's telling the story.
Exactly. So one of the other reasons I like to conduct surveillance is because I'm a father. And being a father, I think that it's important that parents exercise something that we called it in the Marine Corps, trust but verify. You can trust your kids all day long, but unless you are using covert supervision, there is always going to be something that kids want to hide.
Especially in today's age of cell phones, laptops, computers.
Exactly. So this is not Leave It to Beaver anymore. You know, we're not so worried about the broken vase that has been swept behind, you know, the china cabinet. I'm more worried about what apps my kids have on their devices.
Right.
What sites they're visiting, who they're talking to and messaging with. I think all of those things are very important, and not in a perverse way where I'm not giving them all of their privacy that they deserve, but I'm dancing around that line just enough that I'm getting at least a general understanding of what's going on in their life that they have chosen not to fully divulge.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with, you know, there's a line of privacy, of course, but when it comes to who they're talking to, especially outside of the house, there's no privacy. And I say this because there's a lot of things that can happen that when we say, oh, you know, whenever you choose to have maybe your daughter, allow her to date, so to speak.
That's so unwoke of you to say. I don't allow my daughter to date.
Well, you do. Think about it. You set a standard of when they can start wearing makeup, and you allow them to openly have a relationship. I don't think that there's a level of privacy there until they are out of the house and 18 years old at least.
Understandable, and their safety is my responsibility while they're still young.
Right. And I don't think that there needs to be that privacy there. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, that's not right. But, I think there could have been some serious things that could have been avoided when my kids were younger, had I been more involved.
Okay. Yeah, I can respect that. So what types of surveillance are we talking about today?
Covert, what do we say? Electronic. I mean, there's a huge list, but let's just kind of go over the, I guess, basic, one size fits all that can be broken into sub.
So we've got covert and overt.
Right.
And I'll kind of break this down a little bit for, the layman as we go on here. So the covert is exactly what it sounds like. It's you are conducting some type of surveillance, and we're going to go into, some of the more, in-depth methods of collecting intelligence, and surveilling people. But there's a covert side and there's an overt side. So if you are concealing your actions, it's covert.
The van with the FBI sitting in it, that's covert.
The FBI surveillance van that I often label my Wi-Fi.
Right.
There's the overt version, right, which is when you want someone to know that they're being watched.
Right.
Putting up a sign that says, this area is under surveillance.
Right.
Or you're standing there directly, taking a photograph of something.
Right.
You've been, you've had the same strange car pull by the house half a dozen times in the last hour, and you just want to let them know that you see them, right? And that goes back into the counter surveillance. So if you're being overt or obvious about what you're doing, then that's the flip of that coin. There's also passive and active surveillance. Passive being something that is just always doing what it does and in the background, right? So you can have something that monitors your work computers. You have something that is always recording CCTV, that gets recorded to a cloud or a drive. And then you have active surveillance, which is when you are performing a particular action and forward advancing that surveillance into a situation.
Right.
Pulling out your cell phone, pulling out, a tape recorder, whatever it is that you're doing, going forward and looking into something that's going on. And it's no longer just that subdued passive collection. And then you have physical and electronic. Right. So the physical stuff is everything we've kind of been talking about so far, taking pictures and video recordings, taking notes, building, background checks and things like that. And then you have electronic surveillance, which we'll get into a little bit here, which is like your key loggers and, your red flag, data, surveillance for your computer, your work computers, the apps that you can download that help you look into, where your kids are and what apps are on their phone kind of.
Right.
And so electronic surveillance becomes a huge discussion, especially when you start getting into metadata and all that kind of stuff. But once again, that is the professional side. And so I'm trying to break this down as plain and simple as we can today. So how how does this apply in our normal daily lives? As somebody's listening to this, Mr. Frost, and they're thinking, man, there's a lot of things. I don't know if I've done any of those. Like we've kind of touched on it a little bit, talking about kids and teenagers, and work. But what else do you think, is out there that requires surveillance?
Well, just your everyday life. I'm going to say this just because, I'm a single guy. So I'm going to make this relatable to anybody who kind of understands this, is that, you want to get to know somebody and you want to learn about them. You're going to do a little bit of surveillance. You're going to ask questions of their friends, especially if it's in your friend group. Hey, are they single? What are they into? You start talking, maybe you start finding things that they're into that you can make relatable to make a conversation starter.
Right. And not, once again, not in the creepy,
Right.
stalker connotation. When we're talking about surveillance, I'm not saying, Mr. Frost, follows someone home because he's interested in them,
Right.
to make sure that they're not, going to a crack den. It'll be important later on down the road to know if they live in a crack den. However, just out of the ether here, I'm thinking of my wife, who, when she and I first started, talking and getting to know each other, she climbed on social media and thumbed around, through all of the posts and all my friends and how she and I were interconnected, and, within a very short order of time,
And how you interact with them.
Right. What my general demeanor was, for certain subjects. And so it gave her an idea of what she was dealing with.
Right. And I think everybody should do that. I don't think that anybody should hide, like, I'll joke when I flirt with somebody, like, yeah, I kind of stalked your stuff.
Right.
Because I want to see how you interact with somebody, because I am a flirtatious guy. And if I can see that in a few of your posts, somebody says something flirty, like, and you berate them with, you're out of line and yada, 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 I know that, well, this is going to be a problem.
Right. Yeah. Well, to be totally honest, there's a lot of crazies out there. And so if there is something that you can do to protect yourself against the myriad of, bad guys that go bump in the night for
Right.
whatever reason,
Right.
then it's your responsibility to at least make an effort to filter out the obvious risks, make a risk assessment.
Right. And I really kind of feel like, when we talk about surveillance, we do this for employment as well. When you're trying to figure out who you want to apply for, well, you should know a little bit about the company, not
Right.
what somebody says of like, oh, they're a great company to work for.
Don't just be looking at how much they pay,
Right.
and what
It's,
your responsibilities
what
are.
are they into? Do they align with you?
Right.
Because you look like at the past of like last year, in Kansas, when I was in Kansas, I was on a detail for a certain situation for a major corporation that
Redacted.
that was very, very pro somebody, and that certain person was not.
Right.
And he had some clout in the company, and he made it public. Well, the employees, there was a lot of employees that were like, hey, threw a lot of hate at this gentleman, that created a lot of negativity
Right.
really quick. So it turned into a situation of, wow, I don't want to be aligned with that particular company or that location because, the ideals of that location don't align with me.
Right. If I would have done,
Do they go on strike a lot?
Right.
Sorry, not to cut you off, but
if I would have done my homework a little better a few years ago, I ended up working for a company that had a horrible habit of bouncing all of their payroll checks.
Right.
And so for several months, it was a battle to get a check that would clear.
Right.
I'd get a check. I'd say, hey, is this going to clear? Which you shouldn't have to ask your employer.
Right.
Take it into, the bank, cash it, and then 2 weeks later or a week later, whatever it is, get a phone call that says, hey, this bounced and you're responsible.
Right. I think that, I've had employers like that myself. And it got to the point where I started taking it to the bank, the check to the bank that it was written from, and be like, are funds available for this?
Right.
Because I had to worry if I was going to have all sorts of overdraft fees or, things weren't going to get paid. And then suddenly now my truck payment hasn't cleared. I think it has. And here I am 30 days late almost. And I'm trying to figure out why my credit score's trashed, because here I think I'm being responsible and I'm not, because somebody else isn't being responsible.
Right. And a little bit of homework, you can't believe, every disenfranchised employee, but, there's something to, a collection of people with problems.
You start seeing that trend of like, they don't pay. It kind of turns into,
maybe they don't pay.
Well, I mean, it transcends like wildfire in the executive protection industry. There's a net 30, there may even be a net 60, meaning, they don't pay for 30 days after the job's done, or the job may say, hey, until the contract ends, we don't pay out completely.
Right.
Or hurricane stuff. Here's a perfect example. You don't get the bonus or you don't get your travel pay until they close out with
the contract.
Yeah. And if you're not aware of that, doing your homework, which is in sense surveillance of really understanding that and going, hey, I should have all this mileage, or I should have this airplane ticket reimbursed. It didn't show up on my check, my last check. Well, no kidding, because the contract's not over.
Right. Yeah. Read the fine print. So one of the other reasons you would be able to apply surveillance into your life is the thing that we don't really like to talk a lot about in a direct form, which is that disaster preparation. We're not here to be preppers and teach prepping. However, if you understand who your neighbors are, the local police and fire procedures, if you have, gone through and looked at escape routes and the where-tos and the who does what where.
Right. I think that that's a really big deal for people who move, especially if they move to places that are heavily with hurricanes or tornadoes or, a lot of stuff like that here in Utah where we're at. I mean, yeah, we've had a few tornadoes. Okay. That was 2 decades ago. You know what I mean? So, but we do have to be aware of earthquakes. Do we have earthquakes? We probably have them more than we all notice, but they're not near what they are, but we should still be prepared for what needs to be done for that.
Right. So here in a second, we're going to get to the methods of surveillance. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick promo break. All right, everyone, we're taking a brief moment to talk to you about one of our favorite sponsors. That's right. The Barber Collective is a Southern Utah mainstay, U.S. veteran owned, with an elite team of classically trained barbers for you to get that dapper do, professional fade, or a cut on the wild side. Competitive pricing with walk-ins available. You won't walk out disappointed that you tried The Barber Collective. Call today and schedule your appointment. Mention oppositional forces and receive your first cut on us. You can schedule online at vagaro.com/barberco. That's VAGARO.com/BARBERCO. Or call them at 435-922-8454. That's 435-922-8454. 8454. That's the Barber Collective. Don't let that do you wrong. Go see them today. Check out our friends at Smash Labs Rage Rooms, a Southern Utah exclusive with franchise options available. You won't find another adventure spot quite like this. 5 axe-throwing lanes with a variety of edge weapons and their special Rage Rooms, where you and your friends can work out the day's frustrations by smashing TVs, home appliances, and all kinds of glassware, big and small, and an ever-evolving range of ceramic and miscellaneous items sure to thrill the senses. Call them today and schedule your date night, special event, or even large private parties. Visit their website at www.smashlabs.biz and check out all their special pricing packages, or call 435-359-2214. That's 435-359-2214. Walk-ins welcome. That's Smash Labs Rage Rooms. Awesome. So let's talk about methods of surveillance, Mr. Frost. Cameras. I like cameras. There's a lot of different types of camera systems that you can use when you're conducting.
Super cheap.
Super cheap.
Super cheap.
Amazon. What was the one that I think it was called China Vasion or something like that? It was like
Wish.
Yeah. I mean, there's not all of it reliable. However,
It still has it.
Yeah. I mean, in today's, modern, everything's networked together, everything connects to Wi-Fi. There shouldn't be any reason why you wouldn't have reasonable access to a myriad of different types of surveillance technology, both passive and active. So CCTVs, that's a really big one these days. You're seeing, these Ring type devices all over the place.
Right.
Porch piracy is a huge issue these days. People want to know, who's been by their door for 1,000 different reasons, and now you can get those devices in triplicate: front door, back door, sides of your house, inside your house.
Right.
In the main living spaces. Cell phones. The smartphone cameras are honestly, it's turned everybody into their own investigative journalist.
Right.
If you can pull your phone out fast enough for something that's going on around you, to you, whatever, you have the ability to live stream what's going on, and in real time, it's shooting up into the ether and being viewed by hundreds, thousands, even millions of people.
World star.
World star. And creating an evidence trail that somebody else can pick the breadcrumbs up from later.
Right.
Or you can use later on as evidence in a court case to exonerate yourself in a criminal case.
Right. Even just where you're at.
Right. I don't mean to make this political, but right now we're watching the Kyle Rittenhouse court case unfold. And one of the biggest saviors for that situation is how many people had their cell phones out, how many camera angles they had.
Right.
And whichever way that goes, and we're not saying, anything political or one way or the other way. What I'm saying to that effect is that you can't lie for a live stream. You can't fake in real time that kind of incident. So there's something there that's objective that you can use however it is that it needs to be used later. So trail cams is a really great way, especially for all my friends, as you go to the East Coast and in the South where it's just open land. It doesn't cost hardly anything to get yourself 20 acres worth of property. It's covered in trees. your the egress to your house is 300 yards in, before you come around the corner. Trail cams are a great way to covertly collect information. Pen cams,
glasses. You can buy those cameras that are on your glasses now.
Oh yeah, cheap too.
Right.
And it'll hold several gigs of information on a micro SD card.
Right.
That that plugs into the frame,
right.
and you're good to go.
Right.
Yeah. Collects video, audio. If you have the ability to link these things to your phone or to your Wi-Fi, it collects all the metadata of where you were and the general time and
right.
all these different things.
You and I were talking about this earlier, and just something to make everybody aware of. I can't remember where I saw it, but a sneaky way for people to get pictures of you and the things that you're doing, taking selfies. We all take selfies.
Right.
And it's super easy to take a couple selfies of you and point it right at the person that you're trying to get information of. And even if they're aggressive enough and be like, hey, don't take pictures of me. And you turn it around and go, I'm just taking a selfie of myself.
Right.
With this sign back here because I'm showing off that I'm in front of the Louis Vuitton store or something like that.
Gucci.
Yeah. And then it turns into, well, now nobody's going to question me and I'm going to just start blasting your picture.
Right.
Everything that you do. And they're not going to question it because it's like, oh, we're in an area where they're taking a bunch of selfies.
Exactly. And, something people should realize on both sides of the camera is that if you're in public, you have no reasonable expectation to privacy.
Right.
If you are in a public place, people can take your picture and you can take theirs.
Right.
And it's not, unless you're actively following them and harassing them or you, it's not criminal.
Hashtag paparazzi.
Right. Exactly. If you're in a public space, look to your left, look to your right. There's CCTV, there's surveillance cameras all over the place, everywhere you go now.
Especially shopping areas, things like that.
Exactly. And somebody with their cell phone out is... it's perfectly okay for them to take your picture, and it's perfectly okay for you to take theirs.
Right.
And that kind of goes back into the counter surveillance is if you feel like you've got something like that going on, somebody, is taking a selfie of themselves, but you're in the backdrop and you're starting to notice that you're taking up much more of the frame than their face. Hey, whip out your phone,
Take their picture.
Take their picture. Let them know that they're being watched.
Right.
So, microphones, wireless microphones, the monitor mode. I learned this about 6 months ago. No, less than that. 3 or 4 months ago, I discovered that my iPod or my EarPod Pros, that I could walk away from my phone and turn on like a monitor mode, and I can be in a different room listening to the microphone on my phone through my ears. And as long as I still have that Bluetooth connection, I can listen to what's going on. Now, you can set your phone up to record and walk away from it. I don't know if you can monitor at the same time, but that's another really great way is just leaving your cell phone face down on a table or, somewhere not terribly precarious, and you can audio record. Now this depends on where you are, if you're in a state that has, one party consent, this is not legal advice by any means, but if you're in a one party consent state, you can voice record a situation that you were in.
Right.
And that's okay. If you're in your home, then you can also record the comings and goings within your home.
Right.
Let's see what else. Walkie-talkies. a bunch of different types of two-way radios have a monitor mode where you push a button and you can basically hot mic the other receiver and listen to what's going on the other side. Another cheap option is baby monitors.
Right.
And those can be cameras and microphones, or they can just be microphones. And that is a super simple passive way to mic a room without, having to be crazy about it.
Right. I mean, you look at all those different little things, like you can buy the chargers that have the microphones and the camera in them. They have endless supply of power.
Right.
Because they're plugged into an outlet.
Yep.
And that is something that I think that a lot of people don't understand. Same thing with alarm clocks. They have the same thing. So when staying in a hotel, I unplug those things. I do it on purpose because of that.
Right. Yeah. And, the alarm clocks and the little cell phone USB charger jacks, all of these different things. If you are in a communal space where you don't have an expectation of privacy, your work's break room, something like that, it's not unlawful for your boss, to record the comings and goings, making sure, things aren't getting stolen.
Or even, they don't want to see anything kind of happen. Maybe there's some hostile environment there between employees.
Oh, somebody accidentally spills the coffee on themselves.
Right.
You're going to want something that says, hey, this is what happened. Here is an accurate representation of what this camera saw.
Right.
And the microphone picked up. So, another method of surveillance is public records. This is not going to be for every situation, but I think that it's important for people to have a general understanding that, when you're picking your babysitter or your next employee, you can do a public records check, a background check on someone and pull up relevant information about their legal past.
Right.
It's the reason it's called public records is because it's for public consumption. And so it's not unlawful for you to gather that information as a member of the public. And then that can inform you as to what you're going to take home from that.
Right.
Is it important to me that, an employee, a potential employee had a bankruptcy 5 years ago? No.
Well, depending on what it is.
Well, yes, it depends on
handling my money.
Sure.
I'm going to be concerned, well, what is their financial status now? But that's where like a credit check, that's another form of surveillance of if you willfully give them the opportunity to let you pull their credit. Oh, they have crappy credit. They filed bankruptcy 5 years ago and they still have crappy credit. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
Sure. And
You're
that
not going to handle my money.
Once again, this is just a way of collecting different pieces of intelligence that you can use to collage a person,
Right.
To develop a better understanding of not the entirety of who they are, but a snapshot of what it is that they do. Right. These are things that they've done. Take that as you may,
or involved with.
Right. And eventually it can create a composite of that person that informs you, like, maybe I don't want to take the risk with this individual for employment.
Right.
Maybe this is somebody that I want to keep an extra eye on,
Until I see that, everybody can change. I'm a strong
100%.
You can come from I know some people that have, come from the dregs and drug abuse and all sorts of stuff that have turned their lives completely around.
Absolutely.
And become, we have a mutual friend that has become a very prominent, staple in the contractor world of things from coming from a really bad addiction problem.
Right. And so, this isn't meant to be some sort of end all of be all and this is who this person is. But it informs you enough that you can ask questions if you don't already have the answers to those questions when you're doing things like references and things like that. Because when you're dealing with someone who has lifted themselves up out of obscurity, oftentimes, when you're conducting that interview process and you are going through their references, you will find other people that you can connect to those references and kind of work your way around their circle and say, hey, you know what? I can't find anything wrong.
Right.
This person has totally turned their life around and they've really made something of themselves. And everybody I've talked to says, this is the person you want in your corner.
Right.
I'd take that to the bank any day.
Oh, most definitely.
So the National Archives is a great place. Once you learn how to navigate a site like that, it's a great way for you to pull public record on businesses, on individuals, to help inform you moving forward. There's things like I use a really simple free website called Family Tree Now that allows me to pull up super basic information just to kind of generally inform potential people who are connected to them, previous addresses, previous phone numbers, something that I can pick up one or two of these breadcrumbs and help me kind of start to get along on my way.
Right. I need to say this. Understand, because this is public knowledge, don't try to use this information maliciously. Now, I'm going to say that just in this preference of it's public knowledge. So if you ask me and you were doing something on me, I'm going to say, well, everybody knows that because that's public knowledge.
Right.
But if you try to, I guess, use it maliciously, just because it's public knowledge doesn't mean that it can't be charged criminally.
Right.
Because you're trying to use something to maybe slander somebody or
libel. Yeah.
Something like that. So keep that in mind when if you start searching somebody out or trying to use that information maliciously because, our feelings got hurt or something like that.
Right. This is not something for you to go collect ammunition on someone and then turn it around and, attempt to destroy somebody's life, because they didn't cut their grass.
Right.
And you don't have an HOA and it's not tall enough for the city code enforcer to come out and find them.
Right.
So you start torpedoing their career, because your feelings got hurt.
Right. And I'm only throwing this out there because, well, I've seen it happen over and over. You know what I mean? I may not pay attention to the news, but I pay attention to those strange stories where it's like, neighbor gets shot because other neighbor called employee for not cutting their grass or something like that. Right.
Yeah. This is not some sort of patch job, for people to SWAT other people. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. Swatting is when you, call the cops and say, oh, this person's, barricaded themselves in their house with guns and they said that they're going to kill their whole family.
I actually had an experience like that.
Did you really?
Well, I was dating a woman for a while and we broke up, and I'm not going to go into great detail, but I do have PTSD. She used that against me. She called the cops and said I was having a PTSD breakdown. I was armed and I was saying I was going to kill everybody just because she was upset that we broke up.
Ugh. Hell hath no fury, right?
Right. But I'm just saying, like, that's a great example of that because I stand 6'6", 6'7" on a good day. I'm 350 plus. I'm involved in my community where I was living at the time. I knew pretty much all the cops because it was a smaller city. They knew the address. They sent everybody because
you're a big dude.
I'm a big dude. And when they come finding me,
you're a frost giant, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. But when they come in the backyard where I'm smoking a cigarette and smiling and giggling because I have everybody on shift that can deploy to my house. And they're like, you're just as in good spirits as I see you at the gas station when we get coffee in the morning.
Right.
Exactly.
Stand down, everyone.
Right.
So, sex offender registry is another good public record that you can work with. This is more for your neighbors and potential employees and things like that. Not once again, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning. This isn't for burning somebody
Right.
that made a poor choice at some point in their life. I happen to know just off the top of my head, one of those examples, a Marine urinating outside the barracks,
Right.
And gets slammed with a public indecency or whatever, and
Right.
Gets like 5 years on the registry.
But that's the thing. But at the same time, usually the charge is there with the registry. It may not show the victims, and it shouldn't show the victims. But
Right.
still, it is. So pay attention to that. Really pay attention to that, because it is. If it's a urinating in public, it was one of those things that it was probably, because we've all been there. I have to pee. Nothing's open, especially now with this COVID crap. There's still some gas stations that won't let you go in and use the restroom.
Right. Yeah. And so those registries are often not very complete either.
Right.
It's not one of those things that gets a lot of attention once you're on, whether you were supposed to come off or you've moved. Sometimes information gets patched on that isn't from your case.
Right.
So
It's not well managed.
you have to have an open mind that everything that you're pulling, is something that was plugged in by somebody within, the bureaucratic system that's punching a clock. Right. So, take everything, not with a grain of salt, but, with the understanding that things can be inaccurate.
Right.
Social media could be an entire episode on its own.
Right.
The things,
Facebook alone could be an entire episode.
the things that people will spread over social media for the attention, for the clout, for the pat on the back, to cheer themselves up for the day or to fish for compliments, whatever.
Right.
It's everything. And we talked about this from before. Everything that you put on social media no longer belongs to you. It's not yours.
Right.
You can call it your profile if you want. You can call it, your, chat group if you want. It's not yours. Read the fine print in the terms of service and service agreement. You are giving everything to Facebook, to Instagram, to WhatsApp, to, I don't know about WhatsApp, but
TikTok,
Snapchat. You think Snapchat deletes everything that you take just because you can't see the picture anymore?
Right.
Nope.
Where do you think some of those naughty pictures come from?
Yeah. I actually just saw something the other day where a NSA, I hesitate to say agent because I didn't see it listed in there in the article, but someone who worked with or contracted for the NSA had I think several million pictures of men's naughty parts on a storage device that she owned privately.
Was that NSA? I thought that was just from a bathroom cam or something that she at the NSA.
Oh, maybe.
I actually think that was at the NSA, one of those cheap, easy cameras.
Right.
Put in
it was the urinal, right?
The urinal, yeah. And she had millions upon millions of pictures of men's genitalia.
Yeah. It's so, you got to be careful where you're conducting surveillance,
right?
Because it might be very criminal.
Right.
Bathrooms are criminal.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's the bathroom at your house either.
Right.
It's all criminal. So social media, I challenge each and every one of you, just tying this back into the counter surveillance episode. I challenge each one of you, go through your social media accounts, every single one of them, and start plucking out the things that tell people where you live, that tell people, when you're home, when you're not home. Stop checking in, in the Everglades, when you're on vacation. Wait until you get home, to post those pictures, because everything that you post, everything that you show builds a great big collage, a composite picture of what's going on in your life.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Women are like the ultimate FBI surveillance people when it comes to, they want to find out something about somebody. I had a woman that is a great friend of mine. She proved to me, I hadn't given her my physical address, but I had taken enough pictures and enough selfies in that environment that she was able to almost get my exact address from pictures and overlaying on Google.
Yeah, Google Street View.
In minutes. It wasn't like she had to do a whole lot of work.
Right.
It was minutes.
Yeah, Google Street View is a great tool for conducting surveillance on something that is very constant. So if you want to know what the outside of a building looks like, the outside of a house, right. You and I do this a lot with transports.
Right.
I want to have an understanding of the house that we're going to. I don't need to ask the parents, 1,001 questions. I can pull up Google Street View and I can look at their front door, the front of their house, the side of their house. Okay, so, little Timmy, probably lives, on the, sleeps on the second story, as is, per the usual arrangement for, 2-story homes with kids. And they've got a big backyard and they've got, an overhanging awning, for half the windows upstairs.
Right.
So we need to be careful about when we get up there. Hey, Mr. Frost, you cover, this side of the room with the window so that he doesn't make a run for it.
Because he knows he can scale that window.
Right. Because he's got that thing, the screen popped out already because he sneaks out every other night.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that you can do with something like Google Street View, Google Earth. You can dial that in with an extreme amount of accuracy in very little time, just using, I did this for some surveillance I was conducting a couple years ago. I had to figure out what school a minor was going to, because the parent was keeping the whereabouts of the student secret. I don't know why this is so hard to choke out. So with a handful of pictures from this child's first day of school, I was able to kind of reverse engineer, because I knew the general area of what I was working with. And I went from elementary school to elementary school to elementary school to find that fingerprint playground.
Right.
And be able to say, oh, that's the school. With about 98% accuracy, I'm almost certain that that's the school. So these are things that you can do for yourself to inform, and using social media, using people's selfies and the way that they, especially on something like LinkedIn, people on LinkedIn, they want to pat themselves on the back as much as possible. They want to be as searchable as possible. So every training course they've been to, every class they've taken,
I'm on LinkedIn.
Right. All the work experience and who they're connected to and where and how they, are one person removed from Kevin Bacon.
Right.
You know, people want to be known, right?
Right.
That works against you. So when you're conducting surveillance on someone, you can take that and start just deep diving, because this is publicly accessible, for all the world to see. And if you haven't locked your stuff down on Facebook and Instagram and things like that, that's honestly one of the first places I'm going. If I've got your name or whatever pseudonym, you're working under, I will be in there in under 5 minutes and have a general idea of the city that you live in, the suburb that you're in, whatever.
Right.
Where you work, who you work with, who your kid's teacher's name is.
Right.
It's just that simple. So again, I challenge people, just so that you have an understanding of how you can reverse engineer that, to look into other people, look at what you're putting out there, and then realize, oh yeah, no, I'm making this way too easy for everybody. And look how easy it is, for me to figure out, the little babysitter that I want to hire, the 18-year-old, with the red Solo cup in her hand at the EDC concert.
Right.
As she's
sucking on a pacifier because she's rolling on Molly.
Right. Exactly. And she may not think that you're going to go take a look at that stuff, but why do you think employers today are having people agree on paper that they are allowed to have access to your social media accounts?
Right.
Because they want to know.
Right.
They want to know who they're getting in bed with, just as much as you want to know, what they're going to be about and how much they're going to pay you, how much vacation time they're going to get.
What kind of health insurance they're going to give you.
Right. They want to know, if they turn around tomorrow, are you going to turn into a viral video because you went full Karen on somebody, and now, you're being thrown up as some sort of like crazy Karen racist, whatever. And now your company has to do damage control, right? I run a business, and if my business is being compromised, absolutely, depending on the situation, I'm going to distance myself as much as I can from you as quickly as I can.
Right.
What you did at the Kroger, 2 days ago, normally would have had nothing to do with me. You didn't get arrested. You didn't catch some sort of crazy felony charge of something, but now my name and my company name is being wrapped around and spoken, at the same time as this incident. And I can't have that.
Right. And maybe it's, my employees work for Associated Foods, and you're shopping at, the Piggly Wiggly that Associated Foods has nothing to do with. And you take a picture of you and that, then it gets flipped. I mean, it's that simple.
Right. So there's a couple other things that you can do as we kind of jump from social media into the more electronic surveillance. If it's your computer system and you own the rights, and people are aware of their responsibilities on your systems, you can have keyloggers, you can have spyware apps. On cell phones, you can use different tracking apps. There's a Family Link and Life 360 for the kids and the teens. If you're trying to geo-track, your contractors, and you've given them a phone, and they understand, that they are subject to some level of trust but verify surveillance.
Right.
These are great items for you to use to keep track of what's going on. If you have something that's reporting to you, the data of somebody's web usage, right? It's not telling me every little personal thing that you write down, or what messages you send to each other. But if you work at a work computer terminal and it says that 3 hours out of your computer use was used to be on Facebook
or Pornhub,
then
I gotta make light of this. I'm sorry. It's probably unprofessional, but I mean, that's the truth.
It happens. It happens. And so conducting a certain amount of professional surveillance on your people, whether it's your employees or your family. These things are important tools to keep in your tool belt so that you don't get caught unaware.
Right.
Because that's the number one thing that's going to protect you against having to be defensive, is because you've been offensive about it. Right. And I think that's one of the things you and I are trying to get across to everybody. This isn't about prepping and worst case scenario and damage control. This is about hitting it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, just be aware. I mean, I have a lot of friends that just got rid of Facebook a couple of years ago. But you can go on to Google and they deleted their account as best as they could. But I can still go to Google and it'll still pull up pictures on Google of them from their Facebook, even though they no longer can even sign into that app. They don't even go in there.
Yeah, the Wayback Machine.
Yeah.
Like the Wayback Machine allows you to look at websites archived as they were,
right,
not as they are.
Right. And
you can go back into all sorts of things and say, oh, look, oh, see, it actually said this and then it was this way. And, right. they're trying to flip the story here, but here's a screenshot of this.
Right.
And that's a really great tool, that you can use to better inform yourself. That's right. All this is. All intelligence gathering is, all surveillance is to inform you on the grand scheme, the step back from the pixelated picture. Because all these little bits of information, these little bytes, all the metadata breaks down. But as you take a step back, it allows you to see this larger composite of something. And that's what we're trying to get across to you today, is that there are things out there and you need to pull your nose off the canvas and look at it for the bigger picture so that you are better prepared for whatever it is that you're doing. So one of those things, and Mr. Frost is going to fight me tooth and nail as I dive into this, dossiers. So just so that we're on the same page, a dossier is nothing but a fancy term for a personnel file. Okay. So whether it's your employee or your neighbor or your family member, whatever it is.
Okay. Let me, while we're right here, I don't dispute the dossier situation with immediate family, children, wife, things like that. Now, is there a level of dossier for your neighbor? Sure. But when we talked about this earlier, you went into a little more depth than I agree with.
Okay.
Because I feel like I don't get to know people that well to really care that much about that information.
Sure. And understanding that not everybody is nearly as interested in what's going on around them as maybe I am. But this information was introduced to me by a mentor of mine who had a vast experience in special operations and working with other government agencies and entities, contracting. And it made a lot of sense to me because things that are revealed to you in public record, things that are revealed to you in conversation, in recording, whatever the case may be, that information has to go somewhere. And you can either try to stick it all in your head, or you can compile a simple file, electronic or physical, whatever the case may be, that allows you to access that information later if you feel that it becomes relevant. So
get a better hobby
with a family member. On my calendar, I keep birthdays.
Right.
And
that makes sense.
Right. But somewhere not in my calendar and somewhere, deep and buried in the darkness, I have all my immediate family members' social security numbers and passports and birth certificate information, right?
Right. Kids, wife, maybe.
Exactly. And those things are important to keep and maintain and keep safe.
Right.
There are other things that may be helpful or useful later on. If somebody volunteers information to me and says, hey, will you pick up my phone and, do this quick task for me? Oh, okay. What's your password? Okay. My password's this. Okay. Well, I don't have a nefarious use for it, but in the case of an emergency, and I could name several reasons why it might be important while you're incapacitated and my phone is disabled, that I, might want to remember how to get into your phone. It may also be important for me to save numbers, addresses, codes, schedules, routines, pictures, maybe personal details that have been shared with me that I want to retain for later for, like I say, not nefarious reasons, but so that I am able to have that collage of information that I can backtrack to later and say, oh, well, this is why, or this is how, or, whatever the case may be. And so I'm not saying, develop some sort of hit file, some
That I do promote.
This is not a Steele dossier situation, where I'm saying collect every rumor on someone and stuff it in a file and say, I'm going to pull this out later if they ever try to run for Congress. No, this is a situation where if it's relevant information that might have a use later. I've got a neighbor who's got a dog and they want me to go take care of the dog for the weekend. And they give me the code to their garage so I can get in and let the dog out 3 times a day and make sure it's food and watered or fed and watered. If something were to happen to them or a situation arose where I needed to gain access, legal, lawful, or emergency access to their home.
Okay.
That's something that I can retain for later.
Right. But that's also knowing your neighbors as well.
Exactly. And
I think that's where there needs to be a clarification there of like, you have a bond or maybe not necessarily a friendship, but you have a commonality where you trust each other and you have that information. But, when I hear, somebody say, oh, they gave me the code to the garage. Well, let's be honest. Most people don't even know how to change that code. So they just pass it on to the new owner or the new renter or something like that. And I think that's where that gets dangerous.
Well, and that's a big reason why you should know, how to, that's why you should have an understanding of all of these things so that you better inform yourself on what you can do to better protect yourself and better protect your neighbors.
No, I agree with you.
If you care about your neighbors, if you care about your friends and your family, you take this information, you say, hey, you guys moved into your place 6 months ago, right? Mm-hmm. Is the code on the garage the same as it was given to you? Yeah. Oh, you should change that. Oh, I don't know how. Okay. Quick YouTube, right. Video that takes 30 seconds and can inform you. Everybody should know that you change your locks when you move. Everybody right. should know, that when something becomes compromised, that you have to change everything up. Right. People should know that their passwords to all of their sensitive, online data and everything like that, those passwords should change regularly. Do we? No. But should we? Absolutely. Right. Information awareness and assurance is something that was preached and harped about regularly during my military career.
Well, yeah, because you had encryption and all that stuff to worry about.
Sure. And just as simple as, your Outlook email account, you have to be able to assume that the longer you keep the same passwords, the longer you keep the same access codes,
right.
If it's not a biometric thing, the longer you have it, the more likely it is somebody can obtain it.
Right.
For whatever reason, whether it's a keylogger, at the hotel that you stayed at and you needed to log into something, right?
Right.
There's a bunch of different ways, that you can protect yourself once you have an understanding of, what people do wrong. But I think in this narrow focus today, I'm talking about people are predictable creatures of habit. And so if you are building up general information and specific information about your friends and your family and your coworkers, your neighbors, all it does is serve to better inform decisions you can make later on down the road.
Right. Now, this episode is going on a little bit longer, and I think that this kind of ties into what we're going to be involved with here in the next week with On Point Tactical.
Right. Yeah. Big way. We're going to have Kevin Reeve here in the very near future. We're going to record an interview episode with Kevin. Kevin with On Point Tactical, he's got decades of experience in a myriad of different skill sets, and one of which that you and I are going to go take for the first time is his Urban Scout class. His Urban Scout class goes into a lot of things that I wish I had, more information on from times past.
Right.
Because just looking at the overview for the course, it's old school methods for setting meetings, transferring intelligence, setting up protected intel networks, threat analysis, area studies, basic reconnaissance in an urban setting, how to create observation hides, scavenging for resources, doing covert urban movements, how to be that gray man. That's one of my favorite things from Kevin, is working on and developing my gray man skills.
Right. He even in the survival and the other scout classes, the Jaeger Scout and stuff like that. I love those courses. I'm super excited about this Urban Scout.
Right.
And then I'm also excited about the Urban E&E.
So Urban Escape and Evasion is the other class that we're doing in Austin. And Kevin teaches a legitimate SEER school
Style.
It's a SEER style course that has been used as the basis for other courses of study used by the State Department and by the military.
Right.
It's very much a drinking from a fire hose course on everything from lock picking to boosting cars to improvised weapons, how to stress inoculate yourself against mild forms of torture.
That's where the seer side comes into play. So anybody who ends up taking this course and is aware of what seer school is, it's not the same.
Right.
It's not. And I only say that because I was fortunate enough to go to SEER school for the Marine Corps. And we all know that if you've been involved with the SEER training in any way, shape, or form, it's not a pleasant school. It's not a pleasant thing to be a part of. And he definitely makes it unpleasant, but it's not the same.
Right. It's to me, it was a fun form of unpleasant, because it gave me an opportunity, because I've taken this course before, to learn more about that sort of big city street smarts that I didn't develop living in a big city. And there's all kinds of applicable material that you can pull out of that for even small towns. As you're, driving from point A to point B, flying all over the place. There's all kinds of things that you just don't consider viable options that he opens up your eyes to. And so anybody who's interested in going to Austin with us, it's the 15th through the 20th. It's 2 classes. So the 15th, 16th, and 17th is the one class. And I believe that's the Urban Scout. I might have them mixed up, but then the Urban E&E class is the other one, and it's the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And if you want to come out to Austin and you want to give that a go, I highly recommend that. And people listening today, you can go to onpointtactical.com and research what he does, look at his bio, look at the courses that he offers. If you're not going to go to this one, he's doing it all year round, all over the country. He does a lot of stuff here in Southern Utah that are different forms of scout classes and wilderness survival and engineering.
You need to be a part of it. You just the level of training is beyond.
Yeah, it's. I've often described it to people as it was the most fun I'd ever had with my pants on.
And your pants off, to be very honest. Well, especially being out here in Southern Utah, because, when we did it, last year? Yeah, it was last year that I went to that course.
Which one, the Jaeger Scout?
I went to all of them. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
We went up, and it it gets warm to the day. So I'm just saying that. But, Kevin is an amazing instructor, and then he just has the information. He's like an encyclopedia.
Oh yeah,
he's like
just a well of knowledge.
Yeah, he's like an entire set of Encyclopedia Britannica of escape, evasion, stalking, tracking,
scout. Yep,
like the things and stories that you hear, and then let Dr. Evil come out.
Right.
Then let Dr. Evil come out. And then you're just like, ooh, how do I get more involved with this? And then the other students that he pulls, the contacts that we got with.
Oh, the networking alone, it has always been amazing. The people that you meet.
Right.
Yeah. Kevin has been a mentor of mine for a long time, and I can't say enough nice things about him. So if you are interested, go on the website, tell them that Scotty Don't and Mr. Frost from Oppositional Forces sent you, and see if Kevin doesn't throw you a screaming deal for his courses. I'm not going to say anything because I want you to go put the effort in and reach out. But I'm telling you, not only is it worth the sticker price, but it is it's worth itself 1,000 times over.
Right.
For what he's willing to work out with you, from bringing us up, for having shouted it out. So we're going to be in Austin, 15th to the 20th. Bring your A game. There will be people hunting you. It's honestly, it's so crazy. It's so much fun. And you're learning stuff in the classroom, and then you're applying it out on the streets. Social engineering, neuro-linguistic programming, just the list goes on and on and on. So if you want to go do that with us, that's where we're going to be. One of the few times we'll telegraph
right.
where and when you can find us.
Right.
We're ready. So we already know we're being hunted. So just keep that in mind. You don't have an element of surprise.
Right.
So go drop Kevin a message, and we will see you out there. Mr. Frost, we've gone on for an hour and a half now. Do you want to blow the door and get the hell out of here?
Yeah, let's get out of here.
All right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Oppositional Forces. We're super grateful for all the listenership, for all the engagements that we've had. We've gotten a really warm reception from our friends and our family, and just the people out there in the ether that are coming out of the woodwork and supporting us. Check us out. We have badguyforhire.com. You can find the podcast there. I've updated the website now where we are streaming directly into the website. Also, patreon.com/oppositional forces. We don't have everything dialed in just yet for what we're going to do for our Patreon subscribers, but I promise you, I've got some really great ideas coming down the pipeline. So if you are one of those first people who jump in, I don't care if it's $5, $10, whatever it is, we're going to find a way to make it worth your time and your money. So this allows us to go on the road, to do these courses, to do these episodes, and to put as much time and effort, that goes into the before the show, the after the show. So please, thank you so much for all of your support. Continue to do so. Also, if you can review the podcast, give us, those 5-star ratings, positive reviews go a really long way toward, helping us with the algorithms. So just get out there, share with your friends and your family, like and review, throw those 5 stars up. Big shout out to Tom Larson, our executive producer. This is all, a brainchild, that we've put together with Tom, and without him, oppositional forces wouldn't happen. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Oppositional Forces, Wage War, and Stack Bodies.